Hey, how you doing? Let's talk about this game update because Cyberpunk 2077 just rolled out patch 2.31. And man, there's a ton to unpack here. If you've been cruising around Night City since the big 2.0 overhaul and the Phantom Liberty expansion, you know how far the game has come since launch. Every new update feels like CD Projekt Red is doubling down on ironing out the kinks, adding polish, and sometimes sneaking in some really cool quality of life features that make the city feel that much more alive. And honestly, this patch might not look like a massive expansion on paper, but once you start looking at all the little things, you realize it's one of those updates that just makes the entire experience smoother and more enjoyable. So, let's walk through everything this patch brings, talk about what it means for the game right now, and also what it might signal for the future of Cyberpunk. Buckle up, because there's quite a bit to cover. First off, let's talk about vehicles, because if you've been spending any amount of time in Night City, you know driving has always been a bit of a hot topic. When 2.0 came out, the new vehicle combat was a huge game changer. Suddenly, cars weren't just a way to get from point A to point B, they became part of the action. But one of the newer features they introduced was AutoDrive. This idea that your car can basically take you where you need to go without you constantly steering. On paper, it's amazing, but in practice, it felt a little rough at times. With this patch, though, they've actually put in some real work to make AutoDrive smarter. Now, instead of your car just awkwardly halting at traffic lights or struggling when another car is in the way, it's way smoother. It overtakes vehicles, it doesn't just stop dead at every red light like a nervous student driver, and in free roam mode, it even tries to follow traffic laws and navigate more naturally. It's one of those subtle things that just makes your time in the city flow better, especially if you like that immersive, I'm living in this world feeling, rather than constantly having to grab the wheel. I think for a lot of people who like cruising and soaking in the vibes of Night City, this change alone is worth celebrating. And while we're on the topic of cars, I've got to bring up the Semi-Maru. This vehicle got some much needed love in this patch. There was this super annoying bug where if you applied the crystal coat paint job to the Yaiba ARV Q340 Semi-Maru, the wheels would start flashing in different colors like some kind of neon rave car. Funny the first time you see it, but definitely immersion breaking. That's been fixed, and now the Semi-Maru looks the way it's supposed to. Not to mention, they also tackled some weirdness with the Semi-Maru flipping over during a chase sequence in one of the quests. That was a straight-up buzzkill, because you'd get all hyped up for the chase, and then, boom, the car flips, and you're stuck. That should be sorted now. And let me just say, I love that they're not ignoring these small details. It might seem like a tiny fix, but those little moments where the illusion breaks, they add up. By addressing them, CDPR is kind of reinforcing the idea that they're committed to making this game feel whole. Now, moving away from driving for a second, photo mode also got some upgrades. And if you've ever scrolled through Reddit or Twitter and seen the insane screenshots people post from Cyberpunk, you know how huge this is. Night City is already one of the most photogenic video game worlds out there. With all the neon reflections, the rain-soaked streets, the skyline at night, people go all out with their photo mode shots, and this patch just makes that even better. A bunch of the new poses they added in the last update were locked to specific character genders, which kind of limited creativity. That's been fixed. Now most of those poses work no matter which body type or gender you're playing as. They also did something super clever. They disabled NPC collisions in photo mode. This means you can finally pose your V or NPC companions without them clipping awkwardly through car hoods or floating a couple inches above a chair. You can actually position characters in more fun, cinematic ways, which is awesome for people who love creating art inside the game. And if you're a fan of Royce, apparently some of his poses were broken before, but those got sorted too. Again, small fixes, but these are the things that matter to the community, and it's good to see them paying attention. Now, quests. We've all been there. You're knee-deep in a mission, everything's going smoothly, and then suddenly something doesn't trigger. A car despawns, or you just get stuck. It's frustrating, right? Well, patch 2.31 tackled a bunch of those issues. Take the Freedom Quest, for example. If you decided not to steal the Rayfield caliber in Mordred, the journal entry would sometimes bug out and not update correctly. That's been fixed, so now the game should properly recognize your choice. Then there's the Motor Breath questline, which had a handful of bugs. One problem was that after failing to chase down Semi-Maru, River was supposed to text you and follow up, but that didn't always happen. Now it does. Another issue was that the Semi-Maru could randomly flip during the chase, completely breaking the flow of the mission. That's patched. And on top of that, if River died in an earlier mission called The Hunt, it used to mess with whether Motor Breath would even trigger. That's been addressed too. And here's something neat. If you failed the hunt, you can still get your hands on the Semi-Maru through the auto-fixer system, so you're not locked out of that content. There was also a nasty crash bug in the Nitro quest, specifically after leaving the Yaiba showroom event. That's been fixed, which should save players from that headache. They also tweaked the interface in the Yaiba showroom so it doesn't get cut off if you're using the larger HUD elements setting. I love this because it shows they're really looking at accessibility options too, making sure players who need bigger UI elements don't get punished for using them. Beyond that, the patch knocked out a bunch of localization and lip sync issues across different languages. Honestly, this is one of those areas that people who play in English might not always notice, but if you're playing in Japanese, French, German, or any other language, it makes a world of difference when the lip movements actually match the dialogue. And here's one change I think everyone is going to appreciate. They added a toggle to disable vignette in the graphics settings. I know some people love that cinematic blur and shadow around the edges of the screen, but others absolutely hate it. It can make the game feel claustrophobic, or it can literally cause eye strain for some players. Now you have the choice to turn it off completely, which is such a simple but welcome addition. On the technical side, PC and Mac players got some really important fixes. On PC, there was this annoying problem where NVIDIA Reflex could be disabled if you were running DLSS frame generation, and that could cause the screen to go pink. Nobody wants their high-end rig to suddenly look like a vaporwave nightmare, unless you're specifically going for that vibe. That's fixed. They also ironed out cases where path tracing, which is basically the supercharged version of ray tracing, wasn't activating correctly in certain scenarios. That's a big deal, because path tracing is one of those features that really shows off what Cyberpunk can look like at its absolute best. For Mac players, yes, Cyberpunk is on Mac now. They've addressed some very specific issues. Changing graphics presets was sometimes cranking up screen space reflections way higher than it should have been, making things look off. That's fixed. They also fixed a nasty white screen problem that could happen if you enabled frame generation while entering a brain dance in the information quest. If you're on the App Store version of the game, there was an issue where the game would just get stuck on the press space to continue screen. That's been solved as well. They even cleaned up little UI things like removing an outdated disclaimer about needing to restart the game when disabling spatial audio, which apparently wasn't true anymore. And of course, there are the usual stability and performance tweaks. These are the kinds of things that don't always make for flashy patch notes, but they're super important. A smoother frame rate, fewer crashes, less stuttering. Those are the improvements that make the game more enjoyable day to day. So yeah, that's the broad strokes of what patch 2.31 brought to the table. But let's talk about the bigger picture here. Cyberpunk 2077 has gone through such a transformation over the years. If you think back to December 2020 when it first launched, the game was in a really rough state. It was buggy, it was broken in a lot of places, and it felt like a huge disappointment to many players. But CD Projekt Red has been slowly rebuilding trust, update by update, fixing bugs, overhauling systems, and even adding entirely new mechanics like vehicle combat.